A lot of people know about this notable franchise game, and this we're going to talk about is the 1994 or branding and all the way into this present time Need for Speed. We got some more. Need for Speed is the most popular franchise series created under Electronic Arts. They had a lot of variety of games that are exclusively for each other of the similar handheld or computer, Wii, DS, and other Nintendo or Android products. But now, some people are saying that Need for Speed is on a decline. We got some more info. Starting from scratch, the first ever Need for Speed game was released in 1994 by Electronic Arts in Canada and was released for DOS, Windows, 3DO, Saturn, and the PlayStation 1. This was the first notable Need for Speed series, which was created in 1994. Another version of the Need for Speed Special Edition was released in 1996 from the Microsoft Windows, PlayStation, and Sega Saturn platforms. The original 3DO version offers 8 sports cars, including several exotic models and Japanese imports, and tasks the player with them racing in 3 realistic point-to-point tracks, either with or without a computer opponent. By the time this receives a good reception, and this caused Need for Speed to go into a good success. This is by far the best first ever Need for Speed game that EA have to offer. EA Canada eventually became EA Vancouver, which is a Canadian video game developer in Banbury, British Columbia, which was first opened in 1983. After the success of the Need for Speed, the first title, there was Need for Speed 2, developed by EA Canada and EA Settle, and was only released for Windows and PlayStation 1. For EA Settle, it was for the PC, and for EA Canada for the PlayStation 1. Like its predecessor, Need for Speed 2 allows players to race exotic cars in country-themed tracks from North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia, either against computer-controlled opponents or human opponents via the LAN modern serial connection or on split screen. There are 3 distinct gameplay modes: single race or single event, in which a player simply chooses a car and a course and completes a single race. In this mode, the player can customize both the number and the type of opponents, as well as the number of laps can be completed. A tournament mode in which the player must complete a series of races successfully to unlock a bonus car. The knockout mode, consisting of 2-lap races with 8 opponents. The last place finisher at the end of each race is eliminated from the competition. Need for Speed 2 was met with mixed reviews and controversial opinions. But it did go well, and the PC version was slightly less well received. An issue was that the game required a fast computer at the time to display the graphics at the highest setting. That is, unless everyone have good PC specs. The special edition was released in 1997 and in February 2nd, 1998. After the 1997 Need for Speed 2, we now move on to Need for Speed 3, Hot Pursuit. one of the first ever cars to have some cop races. This was a 1998 racing game developed for PlayStation and for the PC by EA Canada and EA Settle, and was published by Electronic Arts. At its third major installment in the Need for Speed franchise, the first ever game to incorporate police pursuits as part of the major gameplay of this game. Hot Pursuit remains focusing on racing using exotic sports cars, but features races that primarily take place in locations within North America, including various settings and climates. Police AI is improved over the first game, utilizing several tactics to stop both the player and opponent. The PlayStation version was released on March 25th, 1998, while the Windows version was released on October 12th the same year. The game received critical success for its time, with praises from its graphics and fast action. This by far, I would have personally enjoyed it if I was born in the late 90s. Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit was later been preceded by Need for Speed High Stakes in 1999. This, once again, was developed for the PlayStation and PC, the fourth installment, and was follow-up to Need for Speed 3's Hot Pursuit. The game features more realistic elements than its predecessors and introduced a damage system that allows cars to take damage when colliding with objects, affecting their appearance and performance. It also introduced a series of economy-based tournaments, awarding players with a cash prize that can be spent on repairing, purchasing, or upgrading cars from subsequent races. The game's Hot Pursuit mode was introduced. In Hot Pursuit was expanded with more options, allowing players to control police pursuits and attempting to stop racers. High Stakes was designed to convey a sense of risk and consequence, an idea that is primarily reflected in the game's High Stakes mode, where a player could lose a saved car in a race, along with the money that they had spending on upgrading it. Because the game features licensed cars, EA had to convince manufacturers to let their cars take in-game damage. High Stakes was marked the return of the Porsche license, which had been absent from racing games since the Porsche Challenge in 1997. The game received positive reviews from critics, who occasionally compared it to Gran Turismo. Critics generally praise its graphics, artificial intelligence, and realistic elements, but criticize its inconstant frame rate. The Microsoft Windows version was awarded Racing Game of the Year by Computer Gaming World. In 2000, Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed was launched. And this was the first game to be in a handheld version. This was only released for the PS1, and the first ever handheld game that they reached to was Nintendo Game Boy Advance. Now, this is only focusing on the Porsches. Only include 3 racing cars throughout a range of tracks located in Europe. There are 2 career modes. An evolution mode where the player starts with Porsche cars made in 1950 with the first 356 and ends with Porsche cars made in 2000 with the 996 and factory driver mode. An additional online-only conversion of Porsche Unleashed, dubbed as Need for Speed Top Speed, was introduced. The PlayStation version received generally favorable reviews, while the Game Boy Advance version received mixed opinions and mixed review issues. The game's graphics seem to be a little blocky, but I give it a 0 out of 4. Anyways, in 2002, when I was born at the time, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2, the sequel to Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit, was released for Windows and the Nintendo GameCube, PS2, and introducing Microsoft Xbox. This was known as Need for Speed Pursuit Infernal 2 in France. And this was released by Black Box PS2, EA settled for the GC GameCube, PC, and Xbox. That's right, Black Box, EA Black Box developed Hot Pursuit 2. Now, I played it before, and it's very interesting. Definitely one of the most interesting things that we've seen very far. Now this gameplay, like its predecessor, the original Hot Pursuit, the two primarily game modes have been offered, like World Racing Championship, in which players compete against other drivers in a series of races, and Hot Pursuit Ultimate Racer, which adds police to the races. The latter players must complete with the races while evading capture. And you can actually be in also one of the modes, you can actually be a cop as well by stopping the racers yourselves. That's interesting. Pretty cool, I think. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. This is the first ever Need for Speed game to feature licensed rock music with techno music composed by contact artists. The game features several popular recording artists from its time, such as Uncle Kracker, the Humble Brothers, and Hot Action Cop. The game's soundtrack consisted of 8 vocal rock songs and several instrumental rock and electronic songs, all fast-paced with elements in grunge, hip-hop, and rap. This is, in my opinion, that's the good move they ever did so far. Now Hot Pursuit 2, this helped Need for Speed succeed as there are reviews by some reception reviewers, including IGN and GameSpy and GameSpot and Allgame. However, those reviewers have all scored and rated for different consoles. For GameSpy, they voted mostly the PS2 having the best version graphics. In 2003, Need for Speed Underground was introduced, which was released for GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. A Game Boy Advance version was released. Yes, this is another EA Black Box original game. Now, the story takes place in the nighttime, and the plot is the player races in Olympic City in a modified Honda Arcera Integra Type R, sporting wide body kits and easily winning over his opponents, only to be woken up by Samantha from his sleep. It was only a dream. Samantha is the player's friend in Olympic City, and she tours him across the import culture scene in the legal street racing Theron. She helps the player buy his first car, although she mocks the player's choice of the car, calling it weak, saying, "Ouch, that is seriously weak, dude." Samantha also calls the player a loser. Yeah, you get the point. If the player wants to be the best, the player needs to take those top racer boys down. Losers go home. That means if you lose, you're gone. Samantha introduces the player to TJ, one of her acquaintances, who promised him with numerous upgrades and parts, provided he wins races. Over time, the player races other racers and wins them over, eventually drawing the attention of the Eastsiders and the leader of the Eastsiders, Eddie, and Melissa, Eddie's beautiful girlfriend. Eddie is the current best underground racer in Olympic City and berates and bullies the player for his racing skills, going as far as mocking him to take a taxi home so that he can get home faster. But the player provides and proves otherwise. Enraged, Eddie challenges the player to race Samantha, who gets infuriated upon the player's acceptance. She loses and wrecks her Honda Civic C during the race and has been taken by TJ for himself. Therefore, thereafter, and vandalize it. Deeply saddened by the loss of Samantha's car to TJ, Samantha distanced herself from the player. But thankfully, though, the player eventually keeps winning races and offered by Samantha's acquisitions in her absence, and later faces TJ in Samantha's vandalized Honda Civic. TJ loses the race and returns the car to the player, who returns it back to Samantha. They rekindle their friendship, and Samantha motivates the player to race Eddie and defeat him once and for all. Eddie challenges the player to a sprint race and loses. While the player's crew are about to celebrate, it was abrupted by a mysterious gray Nissan 35OZ. Challenges the player to a final race. The player races is the identified 35OZ and wins the race. Actually, the driver, it was revealed that it was Melissa who drove the car. Anyway, there are differences during the gameplay. We got a variety of car events. We got circuit racing, knockout mode, sprint racing, drifting, drag racing, and we got car customization, vehicles, and we got good soundtracks like Get Low, Petey Pablo, Static X, Rob Zombie, The Crystal Method, Junkie XL, Annie Hunter, Asian Dub Foundation, and BT. Boy, I love their soundtracks very well. Now, anyway, the vehicles, there are fully licensed cars by manufacturers. We got the Volkswagen Golf, the Honda Civic C, the Integra, which I recall, and so much more. However, the car in the question is the Hyundai Traban. Or is it the Hyundai Tiburon? I can never remember. And first introduced in Underground was the style point system. Strongly influenced. Style points are rewarded to the player by performing stunts and being competitive in race events. They could be multiplied by the style modifier if you can customize your car. You can't just win by having a basic stock car. During the launch of Need for Speed Underground 1, it received good positive reviews, but was criticized. The only complaints critics had were the repetitive tracks and unbalanced rubber band AI, especially in the game's easy mode, and lack of free roam, and damage in the game. Need for Speed Underground became a commercial hit with sales above 7 million units worldwide. By mid-2004, Underground ultimately sold 15 million copies worldwide. And by July 2006, the PlayStation 2 version of Underground has sold 2 million copies and earned $150 million in the United States. Need for Speed Underground 1 was later succeeded by Need for Speed Underground 2, the direct sequel to Need for Speed Underground 1, and was released for Microsoft Windows, GameCube, Sony's PlayStation 2, Xbox, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo DS. This is actually the first ever time that EA Black Box reached to the DS version. And there was a Sony's PlayStation Portable. And there was a mobile version of the game. Now, the story plot begins after the player has beaten Eddie and the Eastsiders, along with Melissa in Olympic City, and have been revered as the best street racer in Olympic City. After a race the player is called by an unidentified man with an invitation to join his team, and that he is not taking no for an answer. The player ends the call without answering and starts driving to a party, but it was ambushed by a Hummer H2, which rams his Nissan Skyline GTR, wrecking it. A man with a scythe tattoo on his hand calls to confirm that he took care of a little problem. 6 months later, after that, the player boards a plane to Bayview with a good luck note from Samantha. Once the player gets to Bayview, Samantha's friend Rachel Teller will hook him up. The player uses Rachel Teller's Nissan 350Z. Rachel Teller has loaned the player her ride, and Samantha warns the player that Rachel's Nissan 350Z is Rachel's baby, so we have to be gentle. And we better make sure we don't have a single mark on it. But there was a little bit of marks, but it did lack of car damage anyways. So that part that doesn't make no sense to say. Okay, I'm just gonna stop again. The player buys his first car using the money provided by the insurance on his totaled Nissan Skyline and starts racing again. The player soon gains fame and sponsorship deals from winning races and attracts attention of the Rafts, or the Street Reapers, and their leader, Caleb Reese. And it was shortly revealed after that Caleb Reese was the driver of the Hummer who wrecked the player's car in Olympic City. Rachel reveals to the player that Caleb has attempted to take over the racing scene in Bayview by manipulating the sponsorship deals in his favor, threatening the player's livelihood and Rachel's licensing with the sponsors. Caleb attempts to have the player lose to an invitation-only series known as the Underground Racing League tournament by placing Nikki Morris, a RAF member, in the same tournament as the player. This ultimately fails, and Nikki leaves the Rafts after Caleb berates her from losing. She joins Rachel and the player's side. Nikki warns them of the consequences of Caleb's plan if he takes over the city's street racing scene. He's crazy. That will be bad. Desperate to stop the player, Caleb eventually puts all of the remaining Street Reaper Wrath members in an Underground Racing League tournament against a player, which ultimately failure in each time. After losing another sponsorship and a call, Caleb decides that he had no choice but to take down the player himself, saying that you're nothing but bad luck. I took you out once and I'm going to do it again. I'm calling you out right here, right now. Everything on the line. You down or what? However, after Caleb challenges the player to a showdown, the player wins the race and celebrates with Rachel and Nikki while Caleb is left defeated and insolent. That event solidifies the player's status as the best underground racer in Bayview. Now here's the gameplay. Underground 2 is the first game to have an open world which a player can drive freely around, exploring the city, unlocking areas by winning races. Racing modes that are roughly similar to Underground. One race mode was dropped, this being the knockout competition. A lap knockout option is available when racing circuit in non-career races. There are two events. Make that a few events. We got Street Cross or Street X. This takes place similar to circuit races, except they take place in a closed and tight racing tracks. A maximum of 4 players participate in this event. Like drift mode, this mode disables the use of nitrous oxide. The Invitation Tournament Only series, known as the URL, aka the Underground Racing League, which is a tournament that could be taking place in racing circuits or airport runaways. Special events, which are similar to sprints, intending to reach a target point on the map, which is a photographer, and the player must reach to the target within a specific time limit. Achieving this will award the player with a magazine cover or DVD cover with some money cash in there. And there are outruns. During free roam, the player could challenge specific opponents' cars and they will have bright taillights, similar to the player's car when they use nitrous oxide in an outrun, where the goal is to outrun and then distance their car from the opponent's car by 300 meters or 1,000 feet. The player chooses to do an outrun. After you win a different variety of outruns from different racing cars of players, you will be awarded by going to a car shop. Also, the vehicles. The Need for Speed Underground 2, there is the first ever game to feature SUVs. And one of them are my favorite. That is the Lincoln Navigator. There's also the Cadillac Escalade and the Hummer H2. And there are SUV events too. And you can customize SUVs as much as well as cars. Very sweet, I think. There was a multiplayer capability on the PS2, PC, and Xbox. But by 2010, EA Games shut down their servers, rendering the feature inoperable. The PC version has a multiplayer LAM mode and multiplayer races over the internet that can still be used using the games. Oh boy. There was a virtual LAN of Virtual Private Network. Then we move on to, you guessed it, Need for Speed Most Wanted 2005, which carries to the tradition of the open world. Now, Need for Speed Most Wanted 2005 is an open world racing game, and it was the 9th installment of the Need for Speed series, developed by EA Canada and EA Black Box. and was released on November 11th, 2005 for PS2, Xbox, GameCube, Nintendo DS, Microsoft Windows, Game Boy Advance, and Xbox 360. An additional version of Most Wanted was added called Need for Speed Most Wanted 510, was developed the same year for PlayStation Portable. The game focuses on street racing-oriented gameplay and features selection of events and racing circuits, which can be found in a fictional city of Rockport, with the game's main story involving the players taking on a role street racers, which compete against 15 of the city's most elite street racers to become the most wanted racer in the group. It takes place during the story takes place. These members of the Rockport PD work to put the end on city's illegal street racing scene. And there's also a group known as the Blacklist. 15 street racers who had gained notably for their racing and their evasion of the police. The player, a street racer who arrives at Rockport to challenge the Blacklist with a custom-paint blue and silver BMW, receives help from fellow street racer Meow Townstead, played by Josie Marin, in setting up a race with Clarence Razor Callahan and his henchmen Ronnie McCrea and Toru Bolsato, competing with him in a pink slip race a few days later. Mia discovers that the player's BMW has left a huge oil slick at the start line when the race began, and calls to warn him about to end the race very fast. The M3 BMW breaks down due to the engine failure, and the player loses the race, forcing them to forfeit their car to Razor. Cross soon arrives with the Rockport PD and arrests the player for street racing. After Razor and the other street racers escape, but is forced to release them due to the lack of evidence, as the player no longer had a car to drive. After being free, Mia picks up the player from the police station and reveals to the player that Razor sabotaged their car in order to seize it and use it to climb up within ranks within the Blacklist. Razor is one of them. He's number 1 on the Blacklist and used the BMW to get there. In order to get back in, the player must become victorious, win races, and build up your bounty. There are 15 street racers in the Blacklist. Here I go. Sonny, Taz, Vic, Izzy, Big Lou, Baron, Earl, Jules, Kamikaze. Maine, Webster, JV, Ronnie McCrea, Toru Bolsato, and Razor. Clarence Callahan. Okay, that's it. That's it. After Mia provides the player with a safe house and securing a new car, the player works up the Blacklist in a series of street races and involving police pursuits. Speaking of police pursuits, with the concept of players being engaged by the police, which have been featured of most in trials of the series since the first Need for Speed title, the development of Most Wanted saw the gameplay mechanic enhanced and firmly introduced to the series through an employment of a complex system. When players become engaged in a police pursuit, usually from a conduct of a traffic offense refers infractions in the game. In the sight of a police pursuit unit such as speeding and more, you'll be doing hit and run, reckless driving, and more. And Need for Speed Most Wanted is actually the first game to introduce us pursuit breakers, or objects on the road. Pursuit breakers. Activate one or hit one it'll either take out the cop or stop to deal with the aftermath. They work. These pursuit breakers will be locked in with a pursuit breaker icon. Also, there'll be a variety of heats. Need for Speed Most Wanted was originally going to have 10 heats, but that idea had been cut in half and was introducing us from heat 10 to heat level 5. After you reach heat top 5, the day is going to suck. This type of heat attracts top cops, even heavier SUVs, more aggressive helicopters, and everyone's worst nightmare. One cop known as, Sergeant Cross, who is the leader of the Rockport Police Department, has a Corvette driving police squad. You don't want to mess with them. And also, their cars are strong and fast than ever before. This, by far, I hate Cross, and I hate his Corvette squad as well. As part of this development and release, there was a collector's edition of Most Wanted called EA Games' Need for Speed Most Wanted Black Edition, was released in celebration of the Need for Speed series' 10th anniversary, and in conjunction with the release of Most Wanted. The Black Edition features additional races, bonus cars, and additional content. It also comes with a DVD that contains interviews and videos about the game. The Black Edition was released on Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. Only the PS2 version of Black Edition was only released in Europe. I couldn't find the Black Edition on PlayStation. I only got the original Most Wanted. The cutscenes in the game are live-action videos with shot with real actors and set pieces, and CGI effects are added to cars' exteriors and environments for extra visual flair. Cool. There's also music featured in the game, mostly licensed by EA Tracks, which are a variety of genres ranging from hip and hop and rock sun music. I just like the soundtracks. However, they could be a little bit of a pain. They could be a pain though because there are copyright claims. Now, anyway, back to the story. After the player had climbed up to the top of the blacklist, actually became the number 2 racer on the blacklist. As this attract raises attention. Once they became blacklist racer number 2, the rivals soon compete again in another pink slip race. And racers soon later know what the player's game is, selling everyone out. Big surprise. And Razor said that the player is going to pay. But Razor will eventually is going to pay. After the player defeated Razor, Razor refuses to hand over the keys to the BMW. Mia snatches the key, and when Razor attempts to assault her to retrieve them, she subdues him and reveals herself to be an undercover police officer for the Rockport PD, who had been working to bring down the blacklist from the inside for Cross. Cross soon arrives with backup to arrest the blacklist before they can flee. While Razor and the other drivers are all arrested, Mia refuses to let the player be captured and tosses them the keys, advising them to go and run. Wow. The police have been able to pick up every blacklist racer thanks to the player. Cross demands the entire RPD to go after the player in a city-wide manhunt. Mia contacts the player and informs him of an escape by jumping a old bridge. The player cannot go back to any of the safe houses as Cross knows about them. The player successfully evades the cops by jumping the bridge and escaping Rockport. And this is around the time that we get to the introduction of Need for Speed Carbon, aka Need for Speed Underground, with a mix of Need for Speed Most Wanted all over. And it was a direct sequel to Most Wanted. This was released for the PS2, 3, Xbox, Xbox 360, GameCube, Windows, and Mac OS X. The game was released on November 19, 2006. A Wii version was added into the mix. This story took place in the Carbon Canyon and in Palmont City for a large cash prize. So the player assumes the role of a street racer who, several years prior to their involvement in the event of Most Wanted, took place in a major street race around Palmont for a large cash prize against 3 other racers, each leader of a street racing crew. Kenji, leader of the Bushido, Angie, the leader of the 21st Street crew, and Wolf, leader of the TFK. However, the racers were ambushed by the Palmont PD, who immobilizes the player's opponents with an EMP or EMP. And by beginning to arrest everyone involved, the player escaped with the help of Darius, who was the leader of the stat deck. Another street racer and their former girlfriend Nikki, before leaving, she handed over the bag containing the race's prize money, but it was only paper. Following their time in Rockport, the player returns to Palmont but is pursued along a canyon by former police sergeant Nathan Cross, who has now worked as a bounty hunter and seeks revenge against them. After a crash, the player loses their BMW car and Cross attempts to arrest them for the bounty on their head, but is stopped by Darius, who pays him off. Darius asks Nikki, who now dates him, to assist the player, despite her belief that the player betrayed everyone for the prize money. With Nikki's help, the player receives 2 crew members to help in races and a safe house to operate from. Darius is advised the player begins to take part in street races for control over territories controlled by rival crews. Kenji's Presidio, Wolf's TFK, and Angie's 21st Street crew. Once a crew's boss sees you as a threat, they'll probably come looking for you. And if they challenge you, you'll get a shot taking over their turf. In the process, they will be racing against those 3 crew bosses, defeating them and securing a member of their crew to aid them, who confides that the player that they suspected someone else who set up the ambush, and each crew member's former bosses. After securing all 3 boroughs, Darius calls a meeting that he sought to use the player to take control of the city from the other crews, betraying them to Cross. After leaving, Nikki arrives to save the player after making a secret deal with Cross. She soon reveals shortly thereafter that Darius was responsible for setting up the player for the theft of the prize money. Darius tipped off the cops. Darius made the player escape, and someone switched the bag, leaving the player to take the blame by helping them escape the police sting. Now aware of the truth, Nikki sides with the player to take control of the last city borough, leading Darius to reinforce his crew with the assistance of former bosses from each of their crew, Angie, Kenji, and Wolf, to prevent this. The player eventually defeats Darius and his crew, gaining control of all of Palmont's territory, and wins Darius's Ali Lehman's Quadro in a pink slip race. Despite Darius warning him about the victory, before someone faster than them takes over. And now we go on to a little bit of a decline over on Need for Speed. That being Need for Speed Pro Street, which was a 2007 racing game. It received mixed reviews from critics and was lacking of open world. It's basically Need for Speed Underground all over again, with a little bit of exceptions. This plot takes place in some sort of a likable NASCAR series, taking on various racers like Carol McRone and other racers who are good at different events. One of the updates caused technical issues on their games, such as freezes and crashes in the Microsoft Windows version and PlayStation 3 versions. All the game's online features were all discontinued in April 2012. Then we go on to the next part of the decline, known as Need for Speed Undercover, which was the game takes place in Tri-City Bay. As we do know from Reggie's gameplay, the player, an undercover police officer for Tri-Bay, is called to Palm Harbor Police Station by their superior, LT Jack Kellier. The player is informed that their current investigation into the region's underground street racing world to be joined by Inspector Chase Lynn, a federal agent of the FBI, who wants to bring down an international criminal syndicate operating in the region that is involving in smuggling stolen cars. Yeah, I'm not going through this whole story at rate because some people said true, it is a nice game, but some people didn't like it, as some people shunned it as a semi-decline next to Need for Speed Pro Street. Moving on, we go to Need for Speed Shift, which was another set of a decline on the Need for Speed franchise. Now this game, I actually got this for the PS3. And this was again aimed at a hardcore gamer style audience. Shit reverts to the touring car simulation style as its 2007 predecessor, Need for Speed Pro Street. They have a variety of cars, anyways. I'm not going through this car script of them because this video will be a little bit too long. Moving on, we go to the Nintendo-only exclusive game, Need for Speed Nitro. Now, honestly, everybody is really pissed that this was the big dark age for Need for Speed ever. The first of which, this was one of the most reasons what's wrong. Here's the receptions and reviews. There were controversial issues, scoring a 5 out of 10. And also EA said that this was only made for younger audience, for younger children. Honestly, anyone can play this. Honestly, this is bullcrap and BS, in my opinion. Now, Need for Speed Nitro, yes, it's a great racing series, and this game has an aesthetic feature called Own It. While a player is in the lead, the surrounding landscape and buildings are textured by the car's own colors, graffiti, and tags. All of them can be created with the game's new customization car system. Lines on the road will have the color of the car's color. The Own It feature is a convenient way to indicate the race leader, and players get additional style points for staying in first. Now, this game is an international around the world event. There are some countries which I recall some people live in. We got Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Cairo, Egypt, Madrid, Spain, Singapore, USA, and Dubai, UAE. And for the DS version, San Diego. Each city has two full circuit races, one track for drag racing, and the game takes certain places of a circuit for time trial, speed trap, and drift events. The two circuits in Dubai are the Palm Jurong Fisherman Islands and Dubai Marina. Now, the tracks for the drag racing are almost in straight lines. In Dubai, the Burj Al Khalifa and the Burj Al Arab and the Jumeirah Beach Hotel are seen in the video game while racing. In Singapore, races take place during sunset, and all of the other cities takes place during the day. In Rio de Janeiro, the Christ the Redeemer can be seen. There are 35 opponents with names in the Wii version of the game, although 5 of them are leaders, one for each city, and receive cinematic treatment in the form of a quick intro video clip when the players first access in a city in each cup. Jawad, the leader of the street racing in Dubai, is the most competitive and the hardest to beat. He drives a black Tesla Roadster, Porsche 718 Cayman S, and the Lamborghini Reventon. The street racing leader of Cairo, Egypt, is Omar. He drives a 1965 Volkswagen Beetle, a Porsche Cayenne Turbo S, and a Lamborghini Gallardo. For Rio de Janeiro is Thiago, driving a Volkswagen Type 2, a 1969 Dodge Charger RT, and a 2006 Dodge Challenger SRT8. Remind me to tell you that the Volkswagen Type 2 is actually the Volkswagen Westphalia van. The street racer of Mandroid is Lewis. He drives a Hummer H2 SUT, the 1967 Ford Shelby GT500, and an Audi R8. The street racing leader of Singapore is Zarthania. She drives a Toyota Corolla GTS, the Nissan 37OZ, and a Ford GT. In Rio de Janeiro, racers use muscle cars such as the Dodge Challenger and Chevrolet Camaros. In Singapore and Dubai, exotics such as the Audi R8 and Lamborghini Gallardo are used by racers, and in Dubai, even the Lamborghini Gallardo is in the traffic thing. All the leader cars have unique livery and can be unlocked, except for Thiago's Challenger and Omar's Lamborghini Gallardo. Instead of the Challenger and Gallardo, alternative versions of them having different unique livery can be unlocked by the player. After you complete every single event in each cup, you'll be rewarded by bonus cars. For the Gold Cup, you'll be awarded with the Pagani Zonda R, which I recall I don't want to buy a Pagani Zonda R because there's one in customized livery can be unlocked by completing all of the Gold Cup events during Madrid, Spain, Rio de Janeiro, Cairo, and more. Now, controls for the Wii version, they can be supported by 5 different control schemes. The Wii Remote and Nunchuck, the classic controller, and the Nintendo GameCube controller. Since I don't have a GameCube Nintendo controller, when I play Need for Speed Nitro, I actually emulate it and play it with my PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3 controller. So that's why I have good impressive driving. I don't drive as bad in Need for Speed Nitro on the Wii version. I sometimes mess up because of the cops always being in the way. Speaking of cops, Need for Speed Nitro brings back the cops. That's why we see the cover of a Lamborghini Reventon and a Dodge Charger racing while the police, a Shelby Mustang, is pursuing. Now, in each cop, the cops drive specific amount of cars. On bronze, the Hummer H2 SUT. Silver, the Lancer Evolution IX. And the gold version, the Ford Shelby GT 500. No, not the 1967 one, the newer one, which is also a muscle car. And the soundtrack are 26 songs in the Wii version. Some artists in the soundtrack includes KOS, Diaz Rachel, Danko Jones, LMFAO, Lady Severin, and Crystal Method. On the Wii version, they had a variety of songs. The DS version, they have less parts of the soundtracks. But honestly, this is why I like playing Need for Speed Nitro. The soundtracks are a blast, and they help you keep confident of racing. Especially the bonkers. A wake up is a daydream. Every single master of West scenes. A wake up just to go back to sleep. I just like it. It's very catchy. As well as the Rai Rai Hardcore Girl soundtrack. Seriously, I just love it very well. I personally enjoyed it. Now, anyway, I have both the Wii version on Dolphin Emulator and the DS version on my DS. The two of them I have already beaten and occurred. An updated version of Need for Speed Nitro of the game, only exclusively as a downloadable DSiWare known as Need for Speed Nitro X, which is released for the DS on North America November 15th, 2010, and on November 26th in Europe. It features 6 new cars, 16 tracks updated from the original release, and there is a new game mode known as Super Pursuit, in which you can actually play as a cop and knock out the racers yourself, just like a real cop would do. Now, some people mainly criticized almost everybody in the Need for Speed franchise really hated the game, as it was only a Nintendo exclusive because EA wants to try something new. Trying to compete against with Hot Wheels, one thing, but also trying to make Nintendo have more Need for Speed exclusive. Nitro being one of them. If you want to play Need for Speed Nitro, you must emulate it on your PC to make it look like it's actually on a PC. Well, not really. Unless if you're doing mods about it, maybe you should do a mod about it on a PC. Now, a lot of people don't like this game because they have lacking of racetracks, and also they don't have sprint races like on the DS version. The DS version literally has a lot of events. Circuit racing, knockout lap elimination races, sprint races, as well as challenges such as smash challenges and tag challenges. Seriously, the DS version is a lot different than the Wii version. On the Wii version, the graphics, a lot of people said that they're terrible because all the cars look goofy, and a lot of people don't like the story because a lot of characters like Jawad and Thago are stereotyped characters. And Need for Speed Nitro has a lack of power-ups, in which, while you're racing, your car can take on damage, and when your car takes too much damage, their nitro tanks gets disabled. So that's also a bummer per se. So yeah. Need for Speed Nitro was split development into 2 parts. The DS version was developed by Firebrand Games, while the Wii version is developed by EA Montreal. Honestly, this could have worked if Firebrand Games worked with EA Montreal for the Wii version, not just EA Montreal. Also, no offense to Electronic Arts, but did y'all really have to not put in secret locations honestly, the DS version, they have secret locations, which I accidentally exposed the name called the Ski Patrolling Mountain Village. Oh no, I did it again. Oops. The secret location's already out. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm just gonna stop. Moving on. On the Need for Speed Nitro DS version, they have a Nitro mode where there are exclusive cars in the secret locations. You get a circuit race, a knockout race, and a tag time trial event. The most controversial issue about Need for Speed Nitro is one of their cars. True, some of them are goofy on the Wii version, some of them are not. The Volkswagen Westfalen is still normal, while on the Wii version is a little bit looking like the Jester. Honestly, all the cars look like the SK2 battle spec in my opinion, and all of them, even the Camaro, it all look like the SK2 battle specs shape. Honestly, I swear, seriously, I know the shape very familiar. They're very familiar. Even that car shape, they're basically all copying the elements of Hot Wheels. Beat that. Honestly, I do recall that IGN has also made a video back in 2009 about a demo version about Need for Speed Nitro. The graphics looked a lot good and different, and they were a lot better than the ones that we got on the Wii version, anyways. But it's still a good video. It was still a good video. I wish Firebrand Games could have worked with EA Montreal to do the Wii version. We can't just have EA Montreal do everything by itself. Also, no offense, but did they really have to? But did they really have to not add performance upgrades? I mean, honestly, if they had performance upgrades, I could have upgraded the Volkswagen Type 2 to be more faster. That's why I beaten Need for Speed Nitro on the DS so far. I won a lot of races on the secret location Nitro mode, and the Volkswagen Westfalen is completely upgraded. Top speed, top acceleration, top handling, and top nitro boost. This could have worked much better on the Wii version, but it didn't. It certainly didn't. Also, let's also talk about the lack of events. No Smash Point challenges. No Smash Point challenges. No tag challenges. Well, honestly, unless if you're in the lead, you'll actually own a zone area, and that's what build up your own it style points. Yeah, speaking of style points, thankfully that Need for Speed Nitro brought back the style points, but in most cases, some people still don't take much notice. Anyway, as for the power-ups, they're actually good one and all. Also, once the cops are in there, some of the wrenches will be replaced by police badges, in which when you grab a police badge, you can actually call the cops and to take down another racer who is in front of you in the lead. Now, I happen to tell you that hitting cops may be a little bit annoying because this will damage your car or SUV. And this is just overall just pretty irritating and complete bull ass. Despite having a good success for the DS version, Need for Speed Nitro X became a huge failure because it was only an exclusive to the DSware. And everybody said that the original Need for Speed Nitro version on the DS or the Wii version is much better. Everyone is saying that the Wii version is much better than the DS version. And some people said they could suck up the Wii version rather than the DS version. Well, I don't care which graphics are good because I just want to race. Okay, I just want to race. I don't care which graphics are cool. I just want to race. Okay, I just like to race. I just love to race. I just don't care how much of the graphics are. The NDS version was very good. The Wii version did a little bit of good, according to some reviewers, anyway. But anyway, it's simply fun to play, and it's in focus on quality over quantity. EA has managed to put together one of the best racing games on the Wii. But it doesn't do anything remarkable, despite it having a success for the DS. Moving on, we go to Need for Speed World. As a free-to-play MMO racing game, which was closed in 2015. It was co-developed by EA Black Box and this would be additionally be the next game to be developed by Black Box. There was a free-to-play MMO racing game which was closed. I'm not going through this because I haven't seen the game and I will never will. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, the reboot, came to be in 2010 for Windows, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, the Wii, Switch, Xbox 360, and Xbox One was introduced. Now this basically acts as a reboot of the original Hot Pursuit. And it is basically the same story. I have it on the PS4, but I later gave it to my sister. My PS4. Shift 2 Unleashed was released. Need for Speed Shift 2 Unleashed was launched on Windows, PlayStation 3, and Xbox. I ain't going through this. There was an iOS version. Another handheld version. Wow. There was Need for Speed The Run, which was released for the PS3, Wii, Windows, Xbox 360, and a handheld DS version, 3DS, created by EA Black Box. Initially, this was the last game to be produced by EA Black Box before it shut down. The Wii version and the 3DS version was developed by Firebrand Games. Yes, they came back to do another Need for Speed game for the 3DS/DS and the Nintendo Wii. Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 was released by Korean Games and published by EA on Windows, PS3, Wii U, Xbox 360, PS Vita, Android, and iOS, and I'm not playing it. Need for Speed Rivals was released in 2013 on Windows, PlayStation 3, PS4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One, and was developed by Christian Games and Ghost Games. I have that game on the PS5 and the PS4, and I still enjoy it to this very day. Need for Speed No Limits was a handheld phone exclusive game which was released by Firemonkey Studios. There was a Need for Speed reboot, requires consistent internet connectivity, which was released by Ghost Games. Need for Speed Payback was introduced in 2017 on Windows, PS4, and Xbox One by Ghost Games. Yes, another Ghost Games game original. And it features a slightly different of SUVs. Only a few of them, along with off-roaders and other great crazy cars. Need for Speed Heat was introduced in 2019 on Windows, PS4, and Xbox One by, yes, again, another Ghost Games original game. I heard of it for a little bit, but I never played it, in my opinion. And finally, we got Need for Speed Unbound, the most controversial, disastrous game of all. In the 25th installment of the Need for Speed franchise series, and it was the first for the Croatian game since 2013's Rivals with Ghost Games, and it was the main developer since 2012's Most Wanted. Unbound was released and was revealed by Electronic Arts on October 6th last year. And yes, this is when we get to the troubling and the decline of Need for Speed. That is when Unbound was introduced. And also, Need for Speed Nitro was one of the most reasons why Unbound was introduced. Which Need for Speed Nitro is basically the OG Need for Speed Unbound. As a result, people are now hating on Need for Speed Nitro and criticized it because it was the main reason why Unbound was introduced. But I don't think that was the case at all. When Need for Speed Nitro was introduced in 2009, Need for Speed wanted to do something new. They want people to own the world in their own unique way by making crazy logos and more. It can't just all be just the same style and the vinyls and more. And I think this is the situation. What's going on with it lately? I mean, seriously, I like making my own logos, and this is what caused my creativity to go even more creative than ever. And some people don't even understand why I like doing creativity. And some people think I'm being weird and when I started my YouTube channel. Yeah, I think this is what happened when I first created and joined YouTube. I started out mostly doing some creative stuff. Then I started doing some Go Animate stuff, and the creativity was starting to disappear. But I soon later began doing some creativity by making up original ideas and some other video ideas. But now some people think I'm sort of like weird and cringeworthy and similar to Baby Shark Brooklyn, and some people are saying I'm like him, but it's not my case. That's not the case at all. It's not even the case at all. Everyone has the right to be creative. Nobody in this world can be very creative. Everyone can be creative in their own way, and you gotta give them credit. But that's gonna be another story for another video. Back to the Need for Speed franchise. Need for Speed Unbound, disaster. Most disaster. Now, not a lot of reviews were really made. Most of them are the same thing. The PC version on 73, PS5 on 77 out of 100, and Xbox and XSXS. Yes, the PS5 and the XSXS versions have the same 77 ratings. Some other people did a review about it. Some people hated it. Some people liked it. It's just mixed reviews. What is this set upon anyway? Fictional city called Lakeshore City, based off of Chicago. Honestly, if I get Need for Speed Unbound, I'm going to make a review on it and see how am I going to react to it. Is it like Need for Speed Nitro? I'll just have to see where it leads to anyway. Either if I prefer Need for Speed Nitro or other Need for Speed games. Either way, I don't know how. I don't know how am I going to play this game. Well, yes, I have a PS5, but honestly, if I did get a PS5, I won't be able to do a review about Need for Speed Unbound anytime soon. Well, that's about it. And that is it. A lot of games with mixed reviews, controversial hate, and issues. Kinda. And honestly, the Need for Speed franchise fandom honestly needs to grow up, and also needs to handle the fact that Need for Speed is still going well, despite having bad or failure act success. Need for Speed Nitro, I clearly like it because it's my creative childhood, because it encourages me to make logos and more. Honestly, you could redraw and own the zone of your own, and claim it. It's just like owning a territory and owning an area. That's what build up your style points and your rep. What do I prefer? The Wii version or the DS version? Neither of them. I prefer both. I prefer both of them to be the best era of my creative childhood, and they're still the best. But still, some people in the Need for Speed fan base still needs to accept the fact that Need for Speed is never going to die, and it will never will. That is, if EA can stop doing these silly decisions. I just beat it, Need for Speed Nitro, on the Wii version for my very first time with 100% marking on it. And I already made a video about it, so you can go check it out if you want to. So, whatever EA Games is doing will affect a lot of will make a lot of people get interested or lose interest closer with the closer in within a few months or a few years. Anyway, I hope this situation will I hope all the whole history about Need for Speed really got y'all going or something like that. It's just a lot of mixed reviews and mixed opinions about its art style and their shape of the cars. Anyway, honestly, if you don't mind, actually, the biggest thing about Need for Speed, I just love it just the way it is. Even if people are still hating it, or even though it's not so great. With everybody still having a grudge against Need for Speed Nitro and other set of game console graphics, I still think Need for Speed Nitro, in my opinion, is the only place for me to be creative, because I can make my own logos. Even though its graphics are semi great or not that great, according to some people. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Which Need for Speed iteration were you into in your childhood? Did you love the Need for Speed games you used to play? Did you hate them? Let me know what you think in the comments. And subscribe to TTRF 2K2 Trademark for more awesome videos. Thanks. Bye.